One family.
Oh, my God.
Approximately 45.
Two horrible tragedies. That's pretty dark stuff. At sea and on land.
My father, he is in bed and someone shot him in the head.
Do you remember what you noticed?
First thing I thought is this crime scene is staged.
Linda always felt that she deserved more than what she was getting, because she and my dad were always butting heads.
We've got no weapons, we've got no enemies that we know of.
That we know of. And no more details, because she disappears.
I told her not to go on that boat.
So she went out of the way to give them information in case something happened.
Yes, indeed. It's just getting wilder and wilder because in the middle of the ocean, nobody can hear you scream.
Every fisherman has a story about the one that got away. And this is Nathan Carmen's. The 22-year-old was set to meet up with his mom, Linda, for a late-night fishing trip out here off the coast of Rhode Island. But for Linda, the trip was less about catching bass and more about bonding with her son.
Fishing was one of the things that brought them together, and that was Linda really giving herself to the experience because Linda hated fishing. Linda didn't eat fish, but she thought this is the only thing that made Nathan happy, and she wanted to connect with her son in any way possible.
That was a common occurrence. They used to go either weekly or sometimes bi-weekly.
Nathan and his mother, they'd taken a boating course. They had some fundamental knowledge, but they stuck pretty close to land and were fishing for stripers and blues.
Nathan's experience was, I would characterize him as a recreational fisherman.
Mom and son planned to cruise toward Block Island in this boat which Nathan recently bought, one that just passed inspection by the Coast Guard a month earlier. That's comforting to Linda, who has a better to be safe than sorry approach when it comes to boating.
So she begins to tell her friends about this fishing trip and shares information as to where they're going to be at specific times during that trip.
Linda is so cautious, she even texts photos of the boat and its registration number to her friends so it could be easily spotted if the boat breaks down.
You're relying on your engine, you're relying on electronics to get you there.
On a starless night with calm seas, the two depart Ram Point Marina in Rhode Island at about 11 p.m. Linda texts her friends that the journey is underway. The boat is never seen or heard from again.
One of my sisters had called me and said Linda and Nathan are missing. And I kind of freaked out.
Linda's friends begin to worry on Sunday of that weekend because Linda had claimed that she was going to come back and text them when she arrived.
Linda always did a float log. And, you know, when Linda got back, she'd call her friend Sharon, and Sharon never received the phone call.
That's when two of her best friends reach out to authorities and say, something has happened. There are two missing boaters off the coast of Rhode Island. We need your help.
It started out as a typical missing persons investigation, which is not criminal in nature. Our first order of business is naturally to find the missing people, gather the facts and circumstances to try to determine how they potentially went missing. Oftentimes, people are not missing, they're just overdue.
The U.S. Coast Guard quickly begins a search over the Atlantic.
The United States Coast Guard really deployed every available resource that they had to find this missing boat. They deployed fixed-wing aircraft, reconnaissance planes, Coast Guard cutters.
Given the nature of the success rate that the Coast Guard has with search and rescue, I was very, very shocked that they were not finding anything.
We defer to the Coast Guard for search and rescue efforts. In that respect, they were really scouring the ocean, and the search efforts came up unsuccessful.
I think it was day 6 that the Coast Guard made a decision to call off any additional search. And at that point, they had covered 64,000 square nautical miles, which is a massive, massive search area.
So the Orient Lucky, which is a Chinese cargo ship, and they were out around 115 miles south of Martha's Vineyard as they were shifting ballast in their ship.
The Orient Lucky routinely travels the high seas picking up cargo, but this time it will make headlines for picking up something else. Lucky indeed.
They saw what they believed was an orange ball popping out of the ocean about 1 square nautical mile from where the cargo ship was positioned at the time. And when they got a little closer, they realized it was a life raft. And inside that life raft was a figure, a young man standing and waving a flag in distress. Getting this large freighter close enough to not kill Nathan Carmen, but save Nathan Carmen was a challenge. And I think the captain made a certain maneuver that allowed them to get a little closer to Nathan where they could deploy a life ring, and the life ring landed several feet away from where the life raft was. So Nathan then had to jump out of the life raft and swim.
The stunned crew members document the rescue with a series of photos and videos. Once he's on board, Nathan is offered hot soup, water, and dry clothes.
I got a call from my supervisor saying that Nathan had been recovered by a passing ship. I was shocked, and I was thankful that there was a survivor.
The rescue, a kind of needle in a haystack, becomes international news.
And a man lost at sea with his mother for 8 days has been found alive in good condition.
There were pictures of Nathan that were on the front page of newspapers all over the world because everybody thought that this was a wild story.
Next tonight here, the family mystery at sea. More than 100 miles from land, the discovery, and authorities asking what happened.
Nathan, this is United States Coast Guard, Boston. Over.
Mom and I, 2 people, myself and my mom, were fishing, and there was a funny noise in the engine compartment. I looked and saw a lot of water. The boat dropped out from under my feet. When I saw the life raft, I did not see my mom. Have you found her?
No, we haven't been able to find her yet.
Nathan Carmen is still on that freighter. He's expected to arrive in Boston tomorrow night.
So now we can start to maybe get some insight as to what transpired and why it transpired. But it was also concerning because Linda hadn't been recovered.
Happy to be back on land, but exhausted by his ordeal, Nathan heads home and asks for privacy.
I would just like to thank the public for their prayers and for their concern for both my mother and for myself.
It's not the first time this family has dealt with drama and tragedy.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
This is a nautical map. The area that Nathan departed from is right up here. His transit would have taken him down this body of water here. That is the point in which one of the individuals traveling inbound observed Nathan and Linda on the boat. And that was the last time that anyone saw the boat.
In the days and weeks after his dramatic sea rescue, Nathan finds himself just as alone on land as he was at sea. And he feels like the media has gotten his story wrong, so he agrees to an interview with ABC News.
Well, it would be great to have people embracing you, saying, we're glad you're home, we're glad you're alive. It hasn't been that.
Loneliness seems to be Nathan's constant companion. He grew up an only child. His parents divorced when he was little. Kids made fun of him at school.
I heard people trying to imitate him or, try to make fun of the way he spoke. And I've definitely seen people mock the way he ran down the hallway.
I got the impression that a lot of people didn't try to talk to him, and maybe that kind of contributed to his loneliness or feeling isolated and uncomfortable being in crowds and with other people.
His best friend in the world was one who wouldn't judge him, a horse named Cruz.
Yes, I was very fortunate in that regard, and I was able to really form a strong bond emotionally.
Cruz and Nathan had a very tight bond. It was definitely his best friend, his confidant. I went to the stable once with Linda and Nathan. We were ready to leave the stable. I said, well, where's Nathan? Go on in and get Nathan. She's like, no, Nathan loves to spend time with Cruz alone before we leave. And he was there for probably a good half hour, if not longer, just spending time with Cruz in his stall.
But when Nathan is 17, that bond shatters. Cruz dies. Devastated, Nathan runs away from his Connecticut home. Nathan doesn't stop running until he reaches Virginia, 600 miles away. That's where a sheriff's deputy finds him.
Running away from home was something that I felt that I had to do at the time. I don't fully understand or comprehend that sitting here now.
A couple of interesting things Nathan had on him on his possession when he was found in Virginia. He had $4,000 in cash. That money had been given to him by his grandfather, but he also had a couple of photos of his horse, Cruz. And he had a Ziploc bag with some of the horse's hair in it.
His parents drive all night to Virginia to bring Nathan home.
Clark Carmen told me that Nathan had fled to a horse farm, or that's where he was supposed to be going, in Florida, because Nathan had told his father that that was a place that he could feel normal.
Nathan is diagnosed with Asperger's, which we now know as autism spectrum disorder. Social interactions and communication skills can be challenging.
I'm not someone who understands relationships or who's good about talking about emotions.
But Nathan does share a close relationship with his grandfather, John 𝐅𝐔𝐋, a wealthy real estate developer who made his fortune in the nursing home business.
My dad had 5 sisters and 4 daughters, and then he had his first grandchild. I think Linda was really excited that she had a boy to bring into my dad's life.
And then Nathan comes along, and he's your uncle's first grandchild. He doted on him.
Right.
How excited was he to have a grandson?
I mean, there's not really even words for it. He had such great hopes for that kid.
Tell me about the daughters in the family.
I think they were all different individuals. Elaine was the oldest. The next one down was Linda. She was more like John personality-wise. Charlene is the next one down. Valerie's the youngest. I think she was kind of like the apple of John's eye.
My grandfather was the closest person to me. He was like a father to me, and I know I was like a son to him.
When it comes to business, Nathan, a teenager, has a pretty unusual role at his grandfather's company, one that requires him to look and listen closely.
John 𝐅𝐔𝐋 brought Nathan to all of his business dealings because John 𝐅𝐔𝐋 was hard of hearing, and Nathan was his both eyes and ears at every business meeting. They would consult each other after the business meetings were completed. So I think that, you know, John 𝐅𝐿𝐋 was grooming Nathan to take over the family business.
I got the feeling that John had a very good relationship with him and was trying to cultivate that. Nathan was as introverted as John was extroverted, I think.
What was his relationship like as Nathan is growing up? You said there weren't enough words.
He kind of treated him the same way that he treated me when I was a kid. You know, I mean, he couldn't do enough for him. The only problem with it is that John always looked at a problem. If there's a problem, if you throw enough money at it, it's going to solve it.
John 𝐅𝐿𝐋 doted on Nathan, gave him anything he wanted, whether it was a credit card or a new truck or a new apartment. There was nothing that Nathan needed because John was always there with his checkbook or his credit card to give Nathan anything he wanted.
With a support system like his granddad, Nathan's future could be limitless. until one phone call changes everything.
Oh my God! Oh my God! The front door was locked! Oh my God!
Possible 45.
Oh my God! I don't even know what to do! I don't even know where to look!
Windsor, Connecticut, is a typical small town. Pretty nice community. You know, not a lot of crime. Murders in Windsor are very rare.
Not rare enough for the man living on Overlook Drive. John 𝐄𝐏𝐿𝐃 was a self-made man here in Windsor, Connecticut, running his multi-million-dollar real estate business out of his modest home. That is until the morning of December 20th, 2013. Police arrive here after getting an urgent 911 call.
Okay, what's your emergency?
I came to check on my father to pick him up for an activity. He is in bed and someone shot him in the head.
Is he still alive?
I don't think so. I walked into the bedroom and there's blood all over the back wall.
When I saw the news and my dad being brought out, you know, in a body bag and them saying it was a murder, and I lost it. I lost it. I fell to the floor and I'm crying hysterically.
My name is Scott McGregor. In 2013, I was a detective for the Windsor Police Department. Mr. 𝐄𝐏𝐿𝐃 was found in a bedroom on the upper part of the house. In his bed, we found him that he had been shot 3 times.
The scene says a lot to the detective, not for what's in the house, but for what isn't.
You obviously start looking for evidence, and when you can't find spent shell casings, once again you go back to whoever did this, you know, took the time to retrieve those casings and not leave evidence behind. That kind of tells us that the person planned this out, knew to cover their steps, which ultimately makes our investigation harder.
Sergeant Chris McKee also gets the call to head to Overlook Drive, a quiet street with a quiet resident who wasn't exactly well known around town. How did he fit into the community in terms of how he had accumulated his wealth? Was he kind of like a little local success story?
I gotta say, he ran in his circles and his business circles. He wasn't known in Windsor, you know, and I was very active in community roles in the department, and like I said, I wasn't aware of him until this investigation.
McKee walks into a bloody scene. You're looking around the room. Do you remember what you noticed?
A little further down from Mr. 𝐄𝐏𝐿𝐃's bedroom, there was a glass door, or a door with glass panes that led into the backyard. The officer and I observed that there was broken glass.
A break-in?
Well, it looked like it was meant to be a break-in, but looking at it, it was very clear that the glass had been punched from the wrong side, and it was very suspicious. First thing I thought is this crime scene is staged.
The recently widowed victim was known to keep cash in his house, but after the shots were fired, the gunman left. The money still there. Was there any sense that it had been ransacked or robbed?
There had been large sums of money in the house and other valuables, and honestly, nothing appeared touched. It told me that this was personal.
The devastated family speaks out on local news, hoping to catch a killer.
My father, while he lived a small life, he was a very large man, and to know him, you could never forget him.
Anyone could have done this.
This person killed at least once that we know of. This person's gotten away with murder, and chances are it will happen again.
When we start any murder investigation, we want to do a timeline. We want to start trying to find out who was with John.
My father, my mother passed November 21st. my father for 2 weeks, was staying with one of us, or Linda was staying at my father's house.
Another curious thing about the home, it doesn't exactly look like a millionaire lives there. One of the victim's daughters explains why.
My father has an elaborate estate. I mean, the man's worth at least $40 to $50 million. I mean, it's huge. You wouldn't know it going into the house. That's the only reason why I'm bringing up my father's financial worth. Is because looking at this house, you would not know that he has a 25,000 square foot house up in New Hampshire.
You find out that this is a prominent businessman, a wealthy businessman.
Yep.
What does that say to you initially about this?
Kind of starts to focus investigators in on, was this financially motivated? Did someone have, this gentleman had a lot of money, a lot of properties, did someone have something to gain financially from his death?
The videos of the Windsor police interviewing various family members have never been broadcast before.
Nathan and I went fishing. We went out of Point Judith, Rhode Island.
Okay.
So we went on a cod trip that left at 6 in the morning, got back into port at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
A long day.
We learned that John, the day before, the last person to see him was his grandson, Nathan Carmen. We learned that through talking to Nathan, talking to family.
Hey Nathan, what's your last name? My last name is spelled C-A-R-M-A-N.
We have to treat everyone as a possible suspect. Family, associates, people who worked in the office, neighbors, anything, anyone could have done this.
Investigators asked Nathan about employees at 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋 company, and the grandson mentions one who, he says, complains about being overworked and underpaid.
Just that I'm underpaid, also the stress load. I have 101 things to do. I have to get all these papers in. Now you're asking me to do this and the other thing. So he would bitch and moan about that.
The bookkeeper is, in fact, stealing from the 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋 company.
So obviously he's someone we want to talk to.
Nathan begins outlining his final evening with his grandfather to investigators. It begins with dinner. He was going to come here and eat that night with Nathan.
That was the plan, and he wanted me to come too.
Yeah.
And, I said, look, you guys go do it. If I only knew what I knew, now.
After their meal, Nathan and his grandfather return to the Windsor home. At some point, John 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋 gets a phone call and puts it on speaker.
I think that there's a real possibility that the person who called him may have been a mistress. I don't like saying that my grandfather was doing that, but I think there's that real possibility.
It wasn't one of your aunts?
No, it was not one of my aunts. It was not one of my aunts, no one in the family. Very young, 20, 30. And he then told that female voice to just wait. Hold on a second. He showed me to the door.
Nathan Carmen is correct. There is a young woman 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋 has been talking to.
And she became a suspect. Did you go anywhere else that night or anything like that? Or did you just stay home?
No, I didn't sleep because I had to be at, I was supposed to be at the meet my mom at 3 o'clock. When I fall asleep, I have difficulty waking up. So I tried to stay awake. I did run out to Stop and Shop, and I got some ice cream for myself. I picked up a few AAA batteries because I was out of them, and then I headed home. Then I stayed until I went back out to meet my mom.
Investigators don't have much to go on, with the exception of some security camera footage, which they used to retrace the last days of John 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋's life. Like this casino video, where the 87-year-old is seen with a much younger woman. Will it provide investigators with answers? The Windsor Police Department may not know who killed John 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋 yet, but they are beginning to understand who did not. Remember the woman Nathan heard on the phone? And the woman at the casino? They are one and the same.
So John 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋 struck up a relationship with a 25-year-old woman. over the course of a year.
She was an acquaintance of John who was going to the casino, staying overnight. The night of the homicide, she confirmed that she had talked to John, but she was kind of quickly dismissed as being involved.
Investigators have also tracked down that bookkeeper Nathan mentioned. His name is William Sati, and he too is cleared.
He had an alibi that night and was confirmed. I think he was actually out of the state at the time. I think we found him in Rhode Island.
While cleared as a suspect in the murder, Sati was later convicted of stealing some $400,000 from 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋 company.
But that's small change compared to the money the patriarch was handing over to family members every year.
One of the problem children was Linda. Linda was taking John's allowances and going off on spending sprees at casinos, or going skiing, or taking these lavish trips around the world.
Linda always felt that she deserved more than what she was getting. I don't know why she felt that way. I don't know, because she and my dad were always butting heads.
Father and daughter also butt heads over the way Nathan is being raised.
The relationship between John and Linda was always volatile, but one day it turned violent. And that was over Nathan's care. Nathan was put into a psychiatric hospital shortly after his horse, Cruz, had died. And the accusations begin to fly. Linda accuses John of smothering her son with all sorts of riches, and John is yelling at Linda, saying that she is a bad mother and that Nathan is normal and that Nathan should be treated as such. And at one point, John reaches across the table and grabs Linda by the hair and starts to pull it. So Linda swings, and she starts to fight back at her father. And it's a combustible moment that probably lasted a minute plus, and they're swinging at each other, they're fighting each other, and the orderlies are summoned as well as the local police, and Linda is arrested right on the spot.
Linda chalks it up as two people cut from the same cloth.
I don't back down for my father. Yeah.
And it's just his personality not to back down.
Yeah, sure. And it's not his personality back down either. So if anyone would have fought with him, you know, it would have been me.
Linda has spent many more years fighting to protect her son from those who might treat him unkindly.
I know he led a very lonely life. You know, it's at the age where kids were being invited to birthday parties and, you know, having play dates. And nobody was calling for Nathan to go to the birthday party. And, you know, it was sad. And she hated that for her child. You know, any mother would hate it if her child wasn't included in anything. But yeah, it must have been hard for Linda not being able to fix that. Linda was a fixer. Linda had to fix things, or at least try to fix things, and she just could not fix that.
Linda and Nathan had a very unique and conflicted relationship. Nathan saw his mother as somebody who was incredibly domineering, and Linda was always trying to get him the therapy that she thought he needed. And I think Nathan wanted to get as far away from his mother as possible because Nathan didn't want to feel different from anybody else.
And with his grandfather, Nathan feels like a success. He learns about business, he's a confidant to John 𝐅𝐿𝐃, his college tuition is paid for, and so is the rent on his apartment and his credit card bills. Linda couldn't compete with that.
I think what it comes down to is Nathan's always felt torn between me and my father.
Picking sides.
Like he had to pick a side.
How's your relationship in general to your mother?
I did move out of our house, and when we were not on good terms, but I since started speaking to her again. Probably about 8 years ago.
Did that concern you at all in terms of looking at him as a suspect, that maybe he might exhibit behavior that you wouldn't normally see, but he does have a disorder?
That was a concern of many of us, is are the behaviors we're seeing, are the answers he's giving in that one interview that he did grant, are these more aligned with behaviors perhaps of someone who is on the autism spectrum? Or can we look at these for what we normally would kind of think This is kind of sketchy, a little suspicious. We want to delve more into this.
Was your grandpa involved during that time?
Yes, my grandpa. He facilitated financially my ability to go off on.
So for Linda, the recent fishing trips are a way of pulling her son back into her life. But now there's the murder of her father to deal with and lots of money at stake. Everybody is under the microscope.
Do you own any weapons?
No.
Anybody else in the family own any weapons?
No.
Anybody have access to any weapons? Anybody that knows anybody that has weapons? Nothing at all. Okay. So we've got no weapons, we've got no enemies we know of.
That we know of.
Do you own any firearms?
I do have an air gun. I'm not sure if that counts as a firearm, but
is it the only?
Yes, it is.
But after speaking with a long line of friends, family, and business associates, investigators are about to realize they've been lied to. In the wake of 87-year-old John Chocolos's brutal murder, investigators have few leads, with one notable exception: fragments of the bullets fired at the victim. There's hope that they could be traced back to a possible murder weapon. What kind of weapon was used to kill him?
It was believed to be a rifle because it was a .308 cartridge, a certain type of bullet.
And a ballistics test concludes the gun used was most likely a Sig Sauer rifle, like this one.
But in the wake of the Newtown massacre, these types of weapons were illegal to own in Connecticut, where Chocolos was murdered.
The detectives focused a lot of their attention on New Hampshire. They scoured gun dealers, I think well over 600 gun dealers, looking for that Sig Sauer rifle.
Eventually, investigators make their way to a place called Shooter's Outpost and speak with salesman Jed Warner about recent purchases. He remembers an interaction with a customer just weeks earlier.
He definitely stood out because he looked like he came off like a construction site. His pants were dirty. He was wearing like a pair of like dirty boots, like a construction feel about him. We started talking about rifles and targeting. He said, actually, I'm very interested in the Sig Sauer 716.
It's an expensive rifle, retailing for almost $2,000. Jed says he suggested other options that were more economical for target shooting, but the buyer knows what he wants.
We do all the paperwork, do the background, he passes. He just kind of walked straight out, and that was the last we saw of him. 2 officers from the Windsor area were there, and then a local, like a Connecticut ATF agent. We had to like go through all the stuff, try to figure out the day of sale.
And there they find it, a bill of sale for a Sig Sauer rifle. The name of the purchaser, Nathan Carmen.
And that became an incredible aha moment for investigators and potentially the smoking gun in this case.
After the discovery at Shooter's Outpost, Nathan is asked again about owning any guns.
And since, because I just wasn't feeling safe at home, I did buy a shotgun.
You did buy a shotgun?
That's correct.
Any other purchases of a firearm anytime?
No.
And that wasn't ever volunteered or brought up till investigators found this out-of-state bill of sale and then confronted Nathan with it.
And how did he respond?
Well, he acknowledged that he had bought this weapon. When asked about it, he said he lost it. And he didn't know where the gun was.
That had to be really a red flag for you all.
It was.
Most people don't lose those firearms or any firearm. But yeah, you don't normally hear, I don't know where it is.
And there was no report of him, making a report that it was stolen, lost, etc.
So what are you thinking at this point? You've been kind of connecting these dots.
Well, it gets better. There was at least 1 hour of unaccounted time during which Mr. Chocolos was shot that Nathan couldn't account for his time.
Linda arrives at this Home Depot parking lot at 3 a.m., where she and Nathan are set to meet up to go fishing. But Nathan is nowhere to be found.
You left your house on or about 3, and we know you got to Glastonbury based on your own words, on or about 4. Why would it take an hour to travel, and I'm guessing 20-something miles at the rate of 65 miles an hour? It's just mathematically not possible.
On or around 3, on or about 3.
So
perhaps after.
But this security footage taken outside Nathan's apartment complex shows him leaving at 2:57 a.m. Linda tries calling her son 3 times, but his phone appears to be turned off. He finally calls her back at 4:01 a.m. Did you think you were closing in on an arrest?
I thought so. Yes.
I have to ask you straight up, were you involved in your grandfather's death? Did you kill him?
Absolutely not. No.
But that potential smoking gun, the Sig Sauer rifle, is still missing. Despite a months-long extensive search of Nathan's apartment, the Chocolate estate, and surrounding areas for that crucial piece of evidence, it's nowhere to be found.
And I think that's exactly what they were pinning their entire case on, was that murder weapon. Had they found it and connected it to Nathan, then Nathan would have been in handcuffs.
And so law enforcement was directed to keep working to try to build the case.
This had to be frustrating.
It just tears at you because, you know, you think you've got it. The family had put up a huge billboard on Interstate 91, you know, and coming and going to work every day, I would see that. I would see Mr. Chocolos's face. I would see, you know, reward money for information.
Even though Nathan is under a cloud of suspicion, he's still a free man, but feels like he's an outcast in his own community now. So he takes a portion of his inheritance that had been given to him by his grandfather, and he leaves the state. He travels to Vermont, and he buys an historic farmhouse, and he also bought a boat.
Nathan buys a 31-foot fishing boat, formerly called the Chicken Pox. He plans another fishing outing with his mom, Linda, who has stood by him throughout all the accusations.
And Linda is very excited about that opportunity, but also very concerned because she knows that her son is not an experienced fisherman or an experienced boater.
Linda tells friends that the plan was to fish off the coast of Block Island and head back the next morning.
She was so concerned that she had a text message conversation with people ashore, and that's a smart thing to do, to let people know what your plans are.
So she went out of the way to give them information in case something happened.
Yes, indeed.
When Linda fails to check in, her friends start to worry.
2 of her best friends reach out to authorities and say, something has happened, we need your help.
At first, we were like, okay, hopefully it's just they're overdue and they're going to come back to shore.
But after several days elapse, authorities search Nathan's home and vehicle and find some alarming items.
We start thinking that he may have intent to either harm himself and his mother or both of them.
How did you get word that something had gone wrong with that?
My cousin Charlene called me and told me that they were missing. And I said, I told her not to go on that boat.
Here is Nathan in a 31-foot aluminum boat with his mother, who's got no experience boating, and he thinks that he's the master fisherman or the master boater. Or does he think this is the perfect place to kill his mother? Because in the middle of the ocean, nobody can hear you scream.
But what really happened on that boat? Nathan Carmen answers tough questions under oath.
How often did you lie to the Windsor Police Department?
There was one inaccurate.
Staring out at that open water, probably wondering what happened to my mother, or thinking, did I just get away with murder?
His mother is still missing and feared dead.
And the question becomes, what happened? Everybody wants to know what happened.
I didn't know if she had been dragged down with the ship. Neither of us had been wearing life vests.
The media coverage was huge.
I'm just asking you to defend yourself against these people who are saying that you did something to your boat that would make it sink.
Yeah, we're done for this evening, period.
He was shooting himself in the foot on national TV.
It is absolutely unfair for the police to use the tragedy that happened to my mother and I as an opportunity to try to nail me for a murder that I didn't commit.
Nathan's grandfather, John Chocolus, had been shot to death 3 years prior to the disappearance of Linda Carmen. And once those connections were made, the story amplified.
You were convinced that Nathan had killed his grandfather.
Correct.
And now you're convinced that he killed his own mother?
It's a story about greed and heartless brutality.
Mr. Chocolus was found in a bedroom on the upper part of the house, in his bed, shot several times in the head. We have to treat everyone as a possible suspect. Anyone could have done this.
But my sisters had told me they suspected Nathan. And that just totally blew me out of the water.
The daughters of John Chocolus got very angry that there was really nothing happening with the case. They couldn't find the murder weapon. They hadn't arrested Nathan Carmen.
And it's just getting wilder and wilder.
Could a family be this burdened to have a second catastrophic event? I didn't know. This is slowly starting to move from a missing persons case to something other than a missing persons case.
It's been 3 years since John Chocolos's murder, with no charges ever filed. Now, the family is facing yet another tragedy as Chocolos's grandson, Nathan Carmen's boat sinks on a fishing trip, with Nathan's mom, Linda, missing and presumed drowned. We're going to head out on a ride on the open water to get a better idea of what happened out here. I met up with Dave Farrell, a maritime lawyer for Nathan's boat insurers. So let's pick up with when the Coast Guard gets involved in this.
They had a lot of vessels out here. They had a lot of aerial searches, and they were really crisscrossing an area that eventually was 64,000 square miles.
That's a big coverage area.
Yeah, the state of Georgia.
And then 2 days later, there's a big shock.
The Orient Lucky finds a life raft 106 miles south of Martha's Vineyard, and in it is Nathan Carmen alone.
With his crew already snapping pictures and recording video, the ship's captain is alerted to a life raft in the water.
After spotting Nathan Carmen and his life raft at sea, I sounded the alarm for our crew to prepare for the rescue efforts, and we were ready to rescue him.
They threw him a life ring, and he grabbed it with his hands. He got dragged up toward the hull of the ship. He was able to push off the side of the ship with his outstretched hand, and he was able to climb up the gangway.
He got onto the ladder. We pulled the ladder up on board.
When Nathan gets aboard the Orient Lucky, the kid looked like Aquaman. There was no physical distress in his well-being. He wasn't dehydrated. He was not hypothermic.
The captain of the Orient Lucky doesn't see anything wrong with him. This is astounding.
I got the call from my supervisor that he'd been located and recovered. I was shocked, and I was thankful. I was happy that there was a survivor, but it was also concerning because Linda hadn't been recovered.
When I found out that, Linda was lost at sea and, I knew she wasn't coming back, it was just, I just had flashbacks of us growing up and just, the good times that we did have. And then, of course, the guilt and the regret that I had of how I treated her in the end. You just don't think that you're going to lose somebody so suddenly like that.
We receive a call from the Coast Guard that Nathan was picked up by a merchant vessel in the shipping lanes in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. First thing you say is, okay, where's Linda? Linda's not with him, just Nathan.
Back on land, with his lawyer present, Nathan's interviewed by 𝐅𝐔𝐋𝐋 𝐄𝐏𝐒, an investigator with the South Kingston, Rhode Island Police Department. This audio's never been broadcast before.
I just went in there and said, Nathan, tell me what happened.
We went out to Block Canyon. It was light, but the sun wasn't over the horizon yet. And we started trolling. Okay. And I heard strange noise coming from the engine compartment. So I opened up the hatch in front of the pilot house, and I saw that there was a lot of water in the bilge.
He went and shut down the engine and moved aft to where his mother was.
He said he told his mom to reel in the lines. How did he describe what was happening with the commotion?
He said to his mother only one thing during this calamity, and it was reel in the lines. And she said only one thing in return, okay, I will. At that point, he went up into the wheelhouse, and he says that he started moving emergency gear up to the bow. He wasn't quite ready to abandon ship, but he wanted to be ready.
I didn't realize we were sinking.
Okay.
I knew there was water in the bilge. I knew there was a lot of water because it was already up to that level, just why I wanted to bring the safety stuff as a precaution. Okay. But I thought I was going to find the problem and fix it.
The third time that he's been in the wheelhouse and failed to radio, he's walking forward to the bow, and all of a sudden, in a split second, the boat sinks.
Boats don't sink that fast.
No. And it sank quickly, like immediately it was out of sight. And that's how he says he never saw his mother again.
He calls for his mother throughout the rest of the day, and he said upon nightfall, you know, he gave up trying to search for her, and he went to sleep and then drifted through the Atlantic Ocean until he was located.
So let's get back to your mother. You talk to her, you know, all the time. You know, you go out fishing twice a week. How would you describe, you know, your relationship with her? Is it good?
I don't see the relevance to this particular incident here.
Yeah, I concur.
I think this interview's over. Thank you, though.
After the interview is over, from our perspective, we're like, okay, this isn't just a missing persons investigation. We may be dealing with maybe a homicide.
Captain Heng Dong observed Nathan walking the deck of the Orient Lucky for hours at a time by himself, staring out at that open water, probably wondering what happened to my mother, or thinking, did I just get away with murder?
And soon, the whole world will hear from Nathan Carmen in his own words.
She'd always been kind of reluctant about safety. I guess she had good reason to be.
New developments in that mystery at sea. Rescued after 8 days in a life raft, searchers had given up.
Nathan Carmen and his mother went fishing last week. He survived the ordeal, but his mother didn't make it.
Now authorities are trying to figure out what happened.
The media coverage was huge. This was a story that made headlines around the country.
Initially, Nathan avoids the media, but eventually agrees to an interview with then ABC News correspondent Lindsay Janis in 2017. At his suggestion, they meet at a park near his home.
So take me through that evening. You met at the marina in Rhode Island, and then what?
We met at the marina in Rhode Island, and we had bait, which we got on board. And as we were heading out into the harbor, I had asked her a couple times in the past, will you go to the canyons with me? And she'd always been kind of reluctant about safety, and I guess she had good reason to be.
While Nathan and Linda were still missing and the Coast Guard scouring the Atlantic, investigators back on land began searching through their vehicles here at this marina, looking for clues that might help in the search.
It looked like he had been somewhat almost living out of his truck or sleeping in his truck. We found some receipts from different marine stores.
items purchased at area marinas in the hours before the fateful voyage included a rock-type anchor that would never have worked for Nathan's boat, and then some lengths of chain. They were curious purchases.
But there was also a bucket of eels that was in Nathan's truck. That stood out to me because eels are often used as bait when fishing for striped bass. And if you left the dock and didn't take your bait, what are you using for bait if you're going fishing?
Nathan tells us the same story he told police, that his mom had been concerned about safety ahead of the boat trip.
And I want to stress that it wasn't an argument, because I want to stress that it was not an argument. She had always been kind of skittish. We're stopping right here with that question.
Oh, okay. But why not reach out for help? The Coast Guard said there was no Mayday call.
I had a radio, and there was also an EPIRB, which is an emergency position indicating radio beacon, on the boat, like someone needs to be medevaced, or when you know you're sinking. But I didn't know that we were sinking until we sank.
Nathan said that there was a lot of commotion going on and the water was being taken on in here. So where would his mom have been when all of this is happening?
Right where you are.
So she would have been right back in this area?
Yes.
But they're not speaking? I mean, and she doesn't know that they're going down?
Nathan has excellent line of sight on her the whole time, and yet he says he never saw her afterwards.
At that point, I didn't know if she had been dragged down with the ship. Neither of us had been wearing life vests. I assumed that if she had been on the surface, that she would have been calling out to me and I would have been able to find her.
According to Nathan, days go by and he huddles on the life raft, keeping a lookout for rescuers.
I was looking out at the horizon for other ships or for helicopters when conditions were good. When the waves were high, because they got to like 13 feet and they were breaking waves at a few points, a few days.
It must have been terrifying.
Yes.
But to some, Nathan's claim of drifting for over a week in rough seas before being rescued defies belief.
The initial videos showing this guy walking up the gangway of the ship without any great problem. He seemed to be just fine.
You would be in dire straits after, 5 or 6 days.
If you laid on that couch for 8 days and you got up to go to the bathroom, your legs would be wobbly because you haven't used them.
At the same time that Nathan and Linda's vehicles were searched at the docks, police in Vermont were conducting a search of Nathan's house, which was under construction.
The investigators find, modems, SIM cards, a few other things. The one thing they don't find is a computer. Whatever computer he was using to conduct his online purchases has disappeared.
Another item that was seized during the search was a lengthy letter that Nathan had written to an unknown priest that described his relationship and his view of his mother.
My mother's bullying, calling me a quitter, a stuck-up snob who thinks he is a king, and a piece of basically characterized my childhood. One night, though, I went to bed imagining myself as essentially a master of my own hell, joying in inflicting grave bodily suffering on other people. So, yeah.
After his interview with Alfred Bucco, Nathan has all but stopped talking to the police and is never questioned about the letter or his missing computer. Reporter Lindsay Janis is one of the few people he is willing to talk to.
I know I wasn't responsible for anything that resulted from the boat sinking. I know I wasn't responsible for my mom's death.
You were convinced that Nathan had killed his grandfather.
Correct.
And now you're convinced that he killed his own mother?
Yes.
That's pretty dark stuff. If the interview hadn't already made Nathan's story seem a little fishy, the follow-up was even more eye-opening.
I did not cause my mother's death. We're done here this evening.
If you have nothing to hide, there shouldn't be a problem answering the questions.
Oh, hi, Dave. Nice to meet you. Hi, how are you?
I'm Matt. Nice
hi,
to meet you.
Matt, nice to meet you, Matt. Thanks so much for taking us out. Initially, when everybody else was scratching their heads and wondering, wow, this poor guy, what happened to his mom? For the average person out there who's looking at this and taking it at face value, folks who know the water, like you do, had your doubts.
Absolutely. People had doubts about this story from the beginning.
With Linda Carmen presumed lost at sea, her reportedly tumultuous relationship with her son Nathan was under renewed scrutiny. He sits down with 2020 for a second interview, which now holds new significance.
If someone said that you did not get along with your mother, that you did not like her, is there any truth to that at all?
No, there's not any truth to that. Our relationship had grown from where it had been. We did have a challenging relationship at one point in my life, but she was the closest person in the world to me after my grandfather passed.
Will you inherit all of what your mother had?
That's something that I can't comment on at this time.
But unbeknownst to Nathan, his mom has decided not to leave him any inheritance. She even records a video message obtained exclusively by 2020, explaining that he won't be getting her house.
Hey, big guy, I guess if you're watching this, you're watching this. I want to explain why I did what I did, and why my will is stated the way it is. I feel that when you moved out, you took everything that was of value to you and everything you wanted. That's my feeling.
And in her written last will and testament, dated 3 years before she disappeared, Linda explicitly excludes Nathan as a beneficiary.
By now, more details of John Chocolos's death and the subsequent investigation have risen to the surface.
Initially, the media was unaware that Nathan's grandfather, John Chocolos, had been shot to death in his bed 3 years prior to the disappearance of Linda Carmen. And once those connections were made, the story amplified. It wasn't a bittersweet rescue story anymore. It was something potentially much more devious.
So, at what point in your life would you say that you became really close with your grandfather?
Here's where I have a bit of an issue. My understanding was we were going to be sitting down and we were going to be talking about
yeah, the raft is my
survival
next
at
bit,
sea.
but we did explain that we need to hear about your whole life leading up to this incident.
Something
How can people know who Nathan is if we don't tell them? What was your relationship like with your grandfather?
I'm not talking about my relationship with my grandfather or with. If you want to ask me any more questions on that line, we're done here.
Can you tell me more about what your grandfather did? He was a big figure in this part of the country.
That's not what this interview is about.
He gets really defensive if people pry a little bit too much. And the way that he shut her off on so many questions and wouldn't cooperate, he was shooting himself in the foot on national TV.
Since we spoke a week ago, there's been a lot of speculation. People are suspicious of you. What do you want to say to those people who are saying something about his story that just isn't adding up?
I'm not aware that those people exist.
There are suspicions about the boat trip. Since we last got together a week ago,
I've said the way it happened.
I'm just asking you to defend yourself against these people who are saying that you did something to your boat that would make it sink.
That's not true.
Nathan had never been interviewed at length by a network or by a reporter, so this was something new to Nathan, and I think Nathan thought it was going to go one way when it certainly went another way.
Was there an issue with the boat that needed to be fixed?
No, there were. We're done.
Nathan, I'm trying to give you an opportunity to speak out against these allegations that have been made.
The only way that I can speak out against them is to say what actually happened, and that's what I've been trying to do.
Another thing that's happened since we last got together, police searched your mom's home.
Yeah,
Did you know anything about that?
We're done for this evening, period. We're done
We're
here.
not trying to make you uncomfortable. We're trying to give you an opportunity to answer some of these allegations.
We're done here this evening.
If you have nothing to hide, there shouldn't be a problem answering the questions.
He walked out. He walked out of the interview, only to come back.
Police never arrested you for the murder of your grandfather. Do you think it is unfair that people are bringing that up and talking about that now?
It is absolutely unfair for the police to use the tragedy that happened to my mother and I as an opportunity to try to nail me for a murder that I didn't commit.
Can you understand when people see that you were the last person to see two people alive? They see that and they say you are either the most unlucky man alive or you had something to do with those two deaths. What do you say to that?
I say that there's no relationship.
Later that month, Nathan holds a memorial service for his mom. It's sparsely attended by some of her friends. Linda's sisters are notably absent.
Now, Linda hasn't even been declared dead yet. Nobody in his family is willing to go because many of us in his family believe that Nathan is truly the culprit.
I'm very grateful to the friends and family who attended in memory of my mom.
Nathan, you've been through so much. How have you been these last several weeks?
It's been very difficult.
We had no boat. We had no body. But as in any investigation, there's always evidence that can be recovered. It's just a matter of making sure that you know where to look.
There's all hands on deck at that point to try to uncover the truth.
As with the death of John Chocolos, according to investigators, there isn't enough evidence to charge Nathan with a crime. But in a twist of fate, a seemingly innocuous insurance claim for the sunken boat is about to take the saga of Nathan Carmen in an unexpected direction.
Some of these strange occurrences maybe could be chalked up to an inexperienced fisherman, a guy who's panicking.
You know, I spent a lot of time with Nathan. I think he was cold, calculating, and had this whole story planned out to explain the disappearance of his mother and the sinking of the vessel.
The idea that he drifted for a week in that life raft just didn't hold water for you?
Not even for a second.
The Nathan Carmen case was incredibly explosive. A young man is plucked out of the ocean. That just conjures up all of these images of, say, Tom Hanks in Castaway.
Author Casey Sherman has spent the last 2.5 years researching the case for his new book, Blood in the Water.
The story is so complex and it has so many layers to it. Not only do you have one potential murder, but it's the story about a family and how wealth can corrupt.
As investigators continue digging into Nathan Carmen's story of being lost at sea, he takes action, filing an insurance claim for $85,000 to recoup the loss of his boat, the chickenpox.
It happened very promptly, and that indicated to me that this guy's really serious.
The insurance company is not going to pay Nathan. In fact, they are going to take Nathan to court. Nathan also didn't back down.
We filed our suit to deny insurance coverage. We were in for a fight. We came away with the distinct impression that almost everything he said to us was a lie. There were holes in every aspect of his story.
Holes in his story and his boat. Here at this marina where Nathan's odyssey began, fellow boaters noticed odd behavior in him the day before that fateful trip.
It kind of caught my eye when I saw him leaning over the back and drilling 2 holes in the transom of the boat. I asked him, "What are you doing?" That's why he told me, he says, He's taking the trim tabs off.
Trim tabs are stabilization devices that help lift the boat up higher on the water. Nathan admits to removing them, leaving holes in his boat, but says he patched them up with a marine putty.
I patched the holes. They seemed to be well patched. And at the time my mom and I went out, I felt that one, I knew those holes were above the water line, and two, I felt that they were securely patched.
The idea that he was patching up those holes, that putty, the patching didn't work?
It wouldn't work. My theory is that he was trying to make it look like he was deliberately altering the boat in a dangerous fashion.
So that maybe it looked like he made a mistake.
He's very calculating. He wanted people to be able to point to, oh, no wonder the boat sank.
Attorney Dave Farrell represented Nathan's boat insurance companies and has looked into Nathan's account of what happened for years. Nathan's story is that his boat started taking on water, but he failed to put out a distress call because he didn't think the boat was sinking. One would think then maybe he would call out for help, the Mayday situation, right? Did he do that?
No, and he had ample opportunity, because each of the times that he went into the wheelhouse to carry gear forward, he was within arm's length of the microphone for his VHF radio, and a good one.
This is where the emergency equipment is, right? Here?
Yeah, right here. A microphone within arm's reach. And he came in here 3 times to get survival gear and bring it up to the bow. So he was within an arm's length 3 times he could have picked it up.
All of these things sound pretty odd. Maybe you can chalk them up to panic, an inexperienced fisherman, but you would have to have hard evidence to really show that he wasn't where he should have been.
I got an oceanographer to assess whether it was possible for him to drift in a life raft to where the Orient Lucky picked him up 7 days later.
And was it?
Absolutely impossible. Physically impossible.
I looked at drifting buoys, I looked at historical data, I looked at thermal images of the Gulf Stream rings. All of these different systems showed the currents going westward, and Nathan claimed he drifted eastward. And that did not make any sense.
And Nathan's aunts aren't buying his alleged fishtails either.
New twists in a story making national headlines involving Nathan Carmen.
They file what is known as a Slayer petition, which prevents a person from inheriting property from someone they murdered.
Nathan Carmen's aunts do not want him to inherit that money, and they say essentially profit off of 2 deaths they believe he caused.
When Nathan walks into court, he's actually got a suit, and he's cleaned up, he's shaven.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Nathan Carmen appearing on my own behalf.
He looks like a young, aspiring law student.
The loss of my mom has been extremely difficult for me, so I can sympathize with petitioners in that respect.
He ended up taking depositions. He ended up going into court and arguing motions.
I'll say that some of the petitioners had awfully substantial motive. And I had very, very little.
He ended up putting up his own defense.
You saw him sort of tell the truth the whole
But in this deposition obtained by 2020, it's Nathan in the hot seat.
This is the deposition of Nathan Carmen.
Did you have a close relationship with your mother, Linda Carmen?
I would say that I did, yes.
When asked to respond to claims that he lied to police during their interviews with him in 2013, Nathan clams up.
How often did you lie to the Windsor Police Department?
There was one inaccurate. I'm pleading the 5th.
Pleading the 5th as to lying to the Windsor Police Department after your grandfather is dead.
That's what
correct?
he said.
Okay.
Nathan pleads the 5th 81 times during this deposition.
I plead the 5th. I plead the 5th. I plead the 5th. And I plead the 5th.
Meaning he declines to answer questions to avoid potentially incriminating himself.
I plead the 5th.
That's damaging to Nathan, I think, in the public's mind. Who takes the 5th? You know, mobsters take the 5th. Gang lords take the 5th. Not somebody that's completely innocent.
Nathan Carmen caught a legal break today after a judge tossed out the lawsuit his aunts had filed to keep him from collecting millions of dollars from his grandfather's estate.
The judge dismisses the case after he rules John Chocollos wasn't a resident of New Hampshire.
The newspapers reported it as a tremendous win for Nathan. I wasn't too troubled by it.
Nathan is off the hook for his family lawsuit, but his insurance case is looming, and investigators have him in their sight.
Pieces of the puzzle had started to come together.
There were too many inconsistencies.
There's no such thing as a perfect crime.
Nathan Carmen and his insurer head to court in Providence, Rhode Island, battling it out in what would be Nathan's biggest legal challenge yet.
Was Nathan at fault for the sinking of his boat, or was he owed a payday?
Nathan Carmen and his lawyer saying absolutely nothing, heading to Providence Federal Court this morning for the first day of the civil trial against Carmen.
He's got everything to lose here. If the court determines that he is negligent in his mother's death, that can open up the potential for criminal charges. Nathan at times was very agitated during the trial, but he was also very active, always leaning over and having conversations with his attorney. And he was right in the thick of things.
He takes the stand, sticking to his story of what happened on that boat. What was he like on the stand?
He is very articulate when he wants to be, very exacting, but also very evasive.
Nathan had no emotion when he testified. That may be because he is on the autism spectrum. And he talked about his mother in a way that she was more of a nuisance than she was a help to him while that boat was going down.
The judge asked him, "What's going on with your mother during all this time?" And Nathan's peculiar answer was, "My mother was part of the problem rather than the solution to a sinking boat."
With the case now in the judge's hands, Nathan talks to the media outside the courthouse.
This isn't about money. It's an $85,000 claim. I almost feel like I have a responsibility to my mom to make sure that the truth comes out.
At the end of the trial, the judge rules that Nathan was negligent with regard to the sinking of the 𝐔𝐋𝐋.
That was a small victory for me because at least a little bit of justice was prevailing through it all.
The civil case acted as the de facto criminal case. FBI investigators, Coast Guard investigators, attorneys, prosecutors, they all had front row seats.
Now it transitioned to his house in Vermont.
Pieces of the puzzle had started to come together and had started to paint a picture for us that this was in fact a criminal act.
There were too many inconsistencies. There were too many things that just didn't add up.
It became very, very clear that Nathan had committed a crime on the high seas.
We don't have a body, we don't have a boat, so it's a very, very difficult case to try to prove. The grand jurors have to decide, is there enough evidence to proceed and indict?
It took several years, but Nathan Carmen is now charged with killing his mother.
Nathan agrees to meet with investigators, but has no clue what's about to happen.
Nathan was surprised when he was advised that he was under arrest for the murder of Linda Carmen.
It was like something out of the golden age of piracy. Nathan was charged with murder on the high seas.
According to an indictment, Carmen devised a scheme to defraud his grandfather's estate and to obtain money from the trust, and the murders were part of this scheme.
However, the indictment doesn't charge Nathan with the murder of John Chocollos.
Medical records, school records.
Nathan hires defense attorney Marty Manella.
Marty Manella is a long-time, very bulldogged litigator, And when he met Nathan, he not only found a client, but he found a son.
He had literally no support. That was probably the hardest thing that Nathan had to endure, the fact that he had no one. But he had us. He really had us. And I had never in 50 years of practicing law had that kind of relationship with a client. Never.
As he's escorted into federal court for arraignment, cameras catch Nathan defiantly proclaiming his innocence.
Not guilty.
Before pleading not guilty to the court as well.
During Nathan's detention hearing, his aunts read a letter to the judge saying that if you let him go, they would be in fear for their life.
I was very relieved that Nathan was going to be put behind bars. If Nathan was not arrested and not contained, I really think he would have gone on a murder spree.
For years, Nathan had lived in solitude in Vermont. He had never threatened anyone. So to me, it was unusual that they were in fear of what?
The court sides with his aunts and denies Nathan's bail, setting a trial date for October 2nd, 2023. Marty and his team get to work.
It was a huge undertaking, and it was a daily, 7-day-a-week thing. It really became part of our lives.
Nathan was incredibly active in his defense. Every waking hour when he wasn't in his jail cell, he was at the prison library, poring over legal books.
This case was his whole life. He wanted his day in court. He wanted to clear his name.
The day of June 15th, 2023, came as a shock. They were just a few months away from trial.
We've learned Nathan Carmen has died while awaiting a trial for his mother's death.
I got a call in the morning. Nathan was gone, and he hung himself. And I just cried.
Nathan took his own life. He wasn't depressed. He wasn't despondent. We were all looking forward to that October date so that we could have this trial.
Despite all the family court battles and accusations, Nathan's aunts come to pay their respects at his funeral.
I attended Nathan's funeral. Myself and my sisters were there. I was very sad.
Nathan's attorney paid for the funeral, paid for his cremation, and then gave his eulogy.
Non-violent and loving young man. Sleep with the angels, my dear friend. It was probably the toughest thing I ever did because it was like losing a family member. It may sound crazy. You lose cases, you lose clients, but you don't have that kind of contact that we had with this person.
I think he is both a victim and a villain in his own story. Nathan Carmen remains an enigma.
The criminal charges against Nathan were dismissed. So in the eyes of the law, Nathan is an innocent man still today. Months after Nathan Carmen's funeral, a Connecticut judge officially declares his mom, Linda, deceased 7 years after she disappeared at sea. The Windsor Police Department tells 2020 that John Chocolos's murder case is still active.
What I'd like people to remember about my dad, he was kind, he was loving. He'd give you a hard time, but he always did it out of love. Linda is so kind and generous to her friends and the people around her. And I remember all the good times that Linda and I had.
What do you want people to know and remember about your uncle, John?
He's a guy that did it himself. I mean, I love that guy, you know, and he loved me.
How much do you miss him all these years later?
Every day. Yep. We went to the cemetery today. Nathan's got a stone there, next to my uncle. Why is he buried there? There's no stone there for my cousin Linda. Where's her stone?
Nathan should be remembered as a troubled soul. I'm happy, I'm relieved that Nathan was buried in the family plot next to my dad. Nathan, the child, belongs where he is. He needs to rest.
An all-new 2020 starts right now.
A chaotic scene. Local pastor Matt Baker has arrived home to find his wife, Carrie, unresponsive in their bedroom.
I put my head to her chest and no air coming out, felt for pulse, nothing.
An EMT told me that my daughter was dead.
There was a piece of paper on the end table and something didn't set right.
Your wife took her own life, and it's pretty obvious.
I just kept saying there's no way.
Was there an autopsy done initially?
There was no autopsy done.
We don't think Carrie killed herself. We know she didn't. Your assignment for today. We're investigating.
We did. It was nonstop all the time.
I would go, "Good morning, angels."
Charlie's Angels of Waco. They were this group of strong women who were not going to just let this go.
You're presented with a crime scene that's not really a crime scene, right?
Things aren't adding up. I have to know the truth. What are you talking about? Murder?
What's your emergency?
My wife is laying in the bed. Her lips are blue, hands are cold.
It was just before midnight here in the small town of Hewitt, Texas, on the outskirts of Waco. Beloved minister Matt Baker comes home to find his wife unresponsive in their bedroom. Their two young daughters asleep in their beds. Matt calls 911.
Are you in there with her right now? Is she conscious?
No,
she's not. Breathing? Did you see what happened to her?
No, I do not know.
The ambulance is on the way, okay? Are you right beside her right now?
Yes.
Matt had been beside his wife, Carrie, since they met at a Baptist summer camp and fell in love.
I was the assistant director, and she was one of the camp counselors. And from day one, we kind of hit it off.
Carrie fell head over heels. She told the family that she'd met a good Christian boy, and she'd fallen in love.
Her faith was the core of who she was. And so it was very important to her that she found someone whose faith was aligned with hers.
Matt grew up in Kerrville. He too came from a very religious family.
Carrie, she was always the bubbly little blonde and just loved life. People were drawn to Carrie.
She was so funny. And when Carrie laughed, she laughed with her whole body. Everyone in the room just could feel her because she was just so free-spirited.
I don't think there was ever a question Carrie was right or not right for me. It was we moved fast. We met in May and married in August.
We tried to talk Carrie into waiting a little longer, and she really did not want to. Carrie was looking for a husband with morals and values that were similar to what she had, and Matt, she believed, had those.
That you may fear the Lord your God, to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you.
She was marrying a Baptist minister. How good is that? You couldn't pick a better guy than Matt Baker.
Can you say Merry Christmas? No, here, take your pacifier out. Say Christmas. Can you give a kiss?
The kids came quickly.
Oh.
They look like this perfect young couple with this beautiful baby.
Carrie wanted children. She always had, and she was a wonderful mother.
And then Cassidy came. It looked to the outside world like everything was just coming together for the Bakers.
If you know our children or not, this is my wife, Carrie, and it's special for me to do this because they are my children, they're our children.
Cassidy, hi.
But it was just after Cassidy's first birthday when the family was dealt some heartbreaking news about her.
It turned out that she had a brain tumor. Carrie was devastated, absolutely devastated.
We went to Cook Children's Hospital in Fort Worth.
It was a scary time, and she struggled in pediatric ICU for 60 days. They started chemotherapy on her.
They didn't know if she would make it through, but she did.
We get to bring her home. That was one of the happiest days.
She needed a lot of care when she came home, but she was expected to recover.
The Academy Awards were playing that night, and I remember staying up watching that. I went in and checked on Cassidy, and she was fine. I gave her a kiss and said a prayer, checked on her older sister, kissed her, said a prayer, and went to bed.
A little while later, he got back up and went and checked on her a second time. This time he started screaming. Carrie jumped up, ran into the room, found Cassidy, and she wasn't breathing at all.
I yell at my wife as I'm taking her out of the bed, and I put her on the floor and I begin CPR. She calls 911.
They brought Cassidy to the hospital, but they weren't able to save her. Cassidy died.
I know we dealt with it differently. We would have discussions about it and pray about it. And it was a struggle.
Carrie bled grief after Cassidy died.
And she was having a difficult time sleeping.
Carrie had been taking over-the-counter sleep aid since Cassidy died.
She could not calm down at night without sleeping pills.
She started writing journals, and she just poured out incredible sorrow. She thought she saw Cassidy wherever she went.
It was horrible. What helped Carrie, in addition to her faith and her family, was she saw a grief counselor for a year. She talked and talked things through.
The death of a child always puts a terrible strain on a marriage. Carrie really fought to keep that marriage together. She loved Matt. She wanted it to work out.
I just told Carrie that men and women often grieve in different ways.
In time, the Bakers and their daughter tried to move ahead with their lives.
It was a year and a half after Cassidy's death. Carrie found out that she was pregnant. Carrie said that the baby was coming by the grace of God.
There was definitely a fear in my wife that I had not seen before. A fear of what if. I lost one, what if we lose another one? I can't handle that.
She loved her girls, and she was so strong for them. Cassidy's life was cut short, but she had them.
The four of them looked like this perfect little family. You would think, oh, look, they just have it all.
EMS, what's your emergency?
Almost exactly 7 years after the death of her daughter Cassidy, Carrie is now seemingly lifeless on their bedroom floor while her husband works to save her.
Do compressions first, okay? Just keep doing compression.
Waco is a great city. It's very religious. You can't walk a block without seeing a church.
It's small enough that most people are just a degree or two away from knowing everybody else.
Hewitt, Texas is a suburb of Waco. Back then, maybe 12,000 people. They have their own city, government, police.
And when Carrie and Matt moved in, they quickly became part of the community.
But in early April 2006, right here in the heart of the Bible Belt, a chaotic scene is unfolding inside this house. Local pastor Matt Baker has arrived home to find his wife, Carrie, unresponsive in their bedroom.
And what's the problem? Tell me exactly what happened.
My wife is laying in the bed, and her lips are blue, hands are cold.
Is she conscious?
No, she's not.
Breathing?
No, she's not breathing at all, no pulse or anything.
I put my head to her chest and didn't see or feel her chest rising, no air coming out, felt for pulse, nothing.
Okay, listen carefully. I need you to get her laying flat on her back on the ground and remove any pillows, okay?
Okay, put her on the floor.
Correct.
Put her on the bed now. Put her on.
All right, she needs to be on the floor, yes, sir.
Okay.
The 911 operator tells Matt to do CPR, to put Carrie on the floor and start CPR.
Do that and tell me when you're done.
Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on. Oh, my. Okay, hold on.
I did not want the EMTs to come in and see her naked. And so I put her clothes on her, for her. And as I'm taking her off the bed, fluid comes out of her mouth onto the floor, and it smells of alcohol.
You're going to push down firmly 2 inches with only your lower hand touching her chest. You're going to do it fast and hard 400 times.
400?
400 times. It's the latest we've been instructed to do, okay?
400.
Twice per second.
Rest it all?
After the 400. You're going
400
to, correct. It's going to be about twice per second. It'll take you about 3.5 minutes to do it, okay? So start right now. I'll tell you when to stop. All right.
While on the phone, Matt asks the 911 operator to call Carrie's parents because he says his daughters are also in the house.
I need to get a hold of her parents. They live in town, and I want them to come over and be with the kids.
Get somebody else started on this, okay?
Thank you.
We received a phone call from the 911 operator telling us that we needed to get over to my daughter's house, that there had been an accident. We needed to get over there immediately.
Oh, she's got foam or something coming out of her nose. Okay, someone's at the front door. I gotta go.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
All right.
My name is Michael Irvin. I was a patrol officer with the city of Hewitt, and at that time I had only had about 6 months of actual law enforcement experience. I was the first officer to respond to the house. There was actually an EMT that met me in the front yard. Matt Baker actually met us outside and then walked us in, and he took us straight into the bedroom where his wife was at.
The EMTs go in and they find Carrie on the floor. She's wearing a T-shirt and a pair of underpants.
And they come in, and I step away and let them start working.
There was a glass there that was actually still cold, if I remember correctly, which led into his account of what happened that night.
It'd been a typical Friday night that Matt says started with him and Carrie sharing a drink before heading to the local Y.
And we had a wine cooler that I'd purchased, and so she drank one, I drank one. We take our oldest daughter to swim practice that night. On the way, my wife started saying her stomach was hurting her. She just felt nauseated, wasn't feeling very good.
After the family returns home, Matt says Carrie still wasn't feeling well, and after taking a bath, she heads to bed while he starts the bedtime rituals with her daughters.
It's a Friday night, so they could stay up later. They could stay up till 10 o'clock watching TV. Came back, laid down with my wife. She's still in bed, half asleep, and she wants another drink. She has a drink, I have one too. She goes to sleep, wakes up at about 11 o'clock, and asks me to go get a movie. And I was like, it's 11 o'clock. She goes, well, go get this movie for me and gas up, because we have a busy day tomorrow.
He left to go get a movie. While he was gone, he came back and he discovered that he couldn't get back in.
Walk to the bedroom door and it's closed. And I try the knob and it's locked. And I knock on it and call her name, Carrie, and there's no response.
Matt says he finds a small screwdriver to try to open the door.
So I popped the lock and opened the door and find her in bed. And it was very eerily similar to walking in the room when I found Cassidy.
As EMTs in the Baker residence work on Carrie, police take note of those wine coolers on the bedside table and something else.
There was this bottle of Unisom that it was almost empty.
She had been taking sleeping pills to go to sleep since Cassidy passed away and started taking more and more of them. And we had discussions that you've got to stop doing this. This is too many. This can be dangerous.
We ran out of the car, and as I started running up to the front of the house, an EMT person stood in front of me and grabbed me and told me that my daughter was dead. I just kept saying, there's no way.
There was a piece of paper on the end table, and something didn't set right. For me, it all pointed back to that note.
A frenzied scene has been unfolding in the middle of the night at the Baker's home. Matt Baker's wife is dead, and there's a note.
On the bedside table, there's a suicide note.
That was the first time that the word suicide entered my mind. I had no idea at that moment what had happened.
In the note, there was reference to Cassidy. Matt explained to me that Cassidy was their daughter. And it's a very difficult time for Carrie because of the anniversary of Cassidy passing away. The first person I remember showing up after me, I explained all the things that Matt had showed me, and I took a step back.
In Texas, in small counties where they don't have medical examiners, the justices of the peace decide what happens when there's an unexplained or a sudden death.
I do remember in that phone call, it was Judge Martin.
They told him they had a suicide note and they had alcohol and that they had pills. And Billy Martin did not order an autopsy.
It was classified as a suicide based on the preliminary investigation and what they saw at the scene.
Police involvement at that point is done.
Carrie Baker's family and her church community are shocked by her suicide.
I hurt for her. I hurt that someone hurt enough that they made that choice.
We're just trying to put one foot in front of the other and get through this. This is...
Less than 1 week after Carrie's funeral, Pastor Matt Baker is back at the pulpit here at Crossroads Baptist delivering the Easter sermon. He tells his congregation that just like Jesus, Carrie has risen up to heaven.
There was always the desire in her to be with a daughter that was in heaven now. And she did voice that several times, that Cassidy needed her, she needed Cassidy.
This was my wife's Bible that she carried for years.
Matt had given her a Bible years earlier, and she started writing her feelings in the margins.
She says, I want to go with Cassidy. She could never let go of Cassidy. It was such a strong hold on her.
The week Carrie died, she had a session with her grief counselor and also saw a doctor who prescribed her medication.
The next day she ripped up the prescription. She wouldn't fill it.
After finding out Carrie died, I had talked to my sister Kay. I just kept saying there's no way.
Carrie would never take her own life.
And then that's when she told me about a visit she got from Joanne.
Joanne Bristol is Carrie's grief counselor and also friends with Carrie's aunt, Kay Bailey.
She had had a session with Carrie earlier that week. She had shared with me what Carrie had shared with her, that Carrie found some crushed pills in Matt's briefcase.
Joanne Bristol also shared that detail and others with police in the days following Carrie's death.
My sister Kay and I, we all started talking, not around Linda. We all were sitting there going, what are we going to do? Because we knew so much about Matt.
We worked at a church camp together. Matt, I believe, had been written up at that particular camp for harassing girls that I went to school with.
There was also an alleged incident from his college days involving a fellow student.
I was afraid of him. I was angry with him. He took away virtually my young adulthood.
Laura Wilson filed a complaint against Matt, saying he sexually assaulted her.
We were both student trainers for the athletic department. He was a sophomore trainer and I was a freshman trainer.
She was cleaning the bathrooms. Matt came in and offered to help.
He came up behind me and he pinned my arms behind my back and started trying to kiss me. I kept telling him to stop. He came up from behind me, picked me up, sat me on his lap, and he began running his hand between my legs. I was struggling to get away. He didn't stop with the kiss. He didn't stop with the touching until he was ready to stop. Now I'm left with myself, violated, in shock, not knowing what to do.
All I can tell you is when she left the facility, was in tears, but nothing that I did.
After the assault happened, his words to me were, "I never meant to hurt you."
At the time, Laura told a college staffer about the alleged assault. Matt was not disciplined.
I dropped out, dealt with recurring nightmares, dealt with trust issues in relationships. It derailed my life for many, many years. I became a different person.
She eventually filed a report with police years later. They began looking into the allegations, but stopped once they realized the statute of limitations had passed. Matt Baker denies assaulting Laura or harassing any female campers.
Things have been said that can be misconstrued, misinterpreted, but I can't say this, I never accosted anybody.
Throughout Matt and Carrie's marriage, rumors of alleged inappropriate sexual behavior would continue to follow the preacher, but his wife stood by him.
She loved Matt. When Carrie heard allegations that Matt had been inappropriate with young women, she was his staunchest defender. She told one young woman, when you marry a Baptist preacher, women are going to come forward and make false allegations, and you have to protect them.
Carrie believed him, and we believed Carrie. She was telling us the truth as she knew it.
I think there's a presumption with a man of God that they have a certain character and a certain ethical base, and we believe that.
Linda's sisters had hoped that by talking to her about the various past allegations against Matt, she might start to see him in a different light. But she didn't. She still had faith in her son-in-law.
My sisters came over, and I told them, let's just grieve and let this go.
But the family wouldn't let it go.
It started with the cell phone records.
And Linda soon makes a startling discovery.
Something wasn't right.
Over the years, since her daughter Cassidy's death, Carrie Baker was in and out of counseling, dealing with her grief, especially around the time of year when Cassidy died.
Anytime you got close to the anniversary of the death of Cassidy or her birthday or holidays, there was definitely a deep sadness.
But there was more going on that year. There was the fact that she was uncertain about her relationship with Matt. She sensed that something was very wrong. After Carrie's death, Linda's sisters sat down with Linda and said, "We don't believe that Carrie committed suicide."
While Linda may have still been processing her daughter's loss, her family's emotions had quickly turned to suspicion.
I remember Nancy saying, "Linda, have you ever considered that perhaps Carrie didn't take her life?" I remember stammering and saying, "Oh, what are you talking about? Murder?"
We don't think Carrie killed herself. We know she didn't.
The family decides to tell Linda what they say they learned from Carrie's therapist.
Carrie had shared with her that she'd found some crushed pills in Matt's briefcase, and she was afraid that Matt might possibly try to kill her.
She said, "I think Matt's trying to kill me." And then she started laughing and she said, "Oh no, Matt would never do that."
But at the same time, I thought, this would make more sense, because I knew that Carrie would never take her own life.
I think if truly Carrie went and said that and was fearful for her life, the counselor should have done more and didn't. Looking back, I think it was a scream, the first scream in a series of screams that took place that week of, "I'm hurting more than you think I am."
Murder, I mean, that's just not something that I could wrap my head around. I needed time to think, to process. This was too difficult for me to be able to discuss.
But then shortly after Carrie's death, Linda says she began to notice Matt was keeping her granddaughters away from her. No more babysitting, no more invitations to school events.
At that point, she started to feel a little different. What was going on here and why was this happening?
Linda remembers Matt and Carrie's cell phones were part of her family plan, so she decides to have a look at the phone bill.
The first really odd thing she noticed was that Matt had continued to call Carrie's cell phone weeks after Carrie had died. It made no sense at all, and then it all started to click. Matt's giving Carrie's phone to someone.
And I think you said calling all angels, but we all went over to your house. You said, we need to get together and talk.
At that point, Linda started to think that maybe her sisters were right, and maybe they really did need to look into this.
It started with the cell phone. And I immediately figured out it was Vanessa Bowles.
Vanessa Bowles was the daughter of the music minister at Crossroads Church, where Matt was the preacher.
The relationship really started between my wife and her. They became friends.
Vanessa had a little girl that reminded Carrie of the baby she had lost.
There were only 3 young families in the church that had small children, so we naturally just kind of congregated together because we had similar interests. We were friends.
Vanessa would later describe in a recorded interview how she says the friendship evolved.
So I just got divorced, and it was nice to have someone, to talk to,
Right.
Who was in a pastoral position.
And she gives her explanation of why she has Carrie's phone.
We were starting to talk and become friends. Then I said, "Don't call my cell because my mom pays for my meds and I don't want to run over during the day." I've done that many times before. And he was like, "Well, I still have Carrie's phone, so I can give that to you."
Maybe Matt was simply seeking comfort in the friendship of a fellow churchgoer. But for Linda, those phone bills had set off alarm bells.
Linda went to the Hewitt Police Department. She showed them the phone bills, but they weren't interested. This was a done case. It was over as far as they were concerned.
That's when Linda said, "I need my angels over here."
I would email them. I would go, "Good morning, angels."
She would always tell us, "You need to do this. You need," and
Here's your assignment for today.
We're investigating.
We did. It was nonstop all the time.
The assignments Linda gave out involved going through the garbage.
And Charlie was doing some digging right alongside her angels as well. She researched whether overdosing on a sleep aid could have really killed Carrie. And she questioned Matt about those alleged crushed pills.
I talked to Matt about the crushed pills.
My wife said she found him in my briefcase when she was looking for a pen. She said, well, did a kid where you work put him in your bag?
Matt claims that, unknown to him, some kids at work may have been spitting out pills into his briefcase.
But that seemed odd because the pills didn't look like they'd been spit out.
What he said couldn't have happened.
And so Kay called Judge Billy Martin to find out why he had ruled Carrie's death a suicide.
I talked to him about the suicide note, and he mentioned it being signed, and I said it was not. And he goes, well, you need to talk to the police. I said, we've already done this, and we just want somebody to investigate it more.
And it was about that time where Matt's story no longer made sense. There were inconsistencies, outright lies, and we needed more answers.
So following the family's urging, police bring Pastor Matt Baker in for questioning.
Well, I just want to sit and talk to him.
Questions needed to be asked, and questions needed to be answered.
"31-year-old Carrie Baker has been found dead in her home. It was deemed a suicide by police, but her family began investigating on their own, and they urged police to question her husband, preacher Matt Baker.
I just want to sit and talk to him, I just want to talk about what happened that night.
Absolutely.
That way we can clear all this up, because I'm sure you know what I'm getting at, okay, as far as, Linda, you know what I'm saying?
It was a very odd week. But not behavior that would have raised red flags.
Right.
If that makes sense. It was one of those deals that I knew she was depressed.
The conversation continues, with Matt sharing his own view on what he believes might have happened.
I left about 11 or so. I wasn't gone maybe 40 minutes.
You left the house and went down to the gas station?
I wasn't even gone long at all.
Okay.
And that was a strange thing about it, is I question where she would have taken the medicine. Personally, this is my opinion. I don't think the medicine is what killed her. I think she threw up into her mouth, but was knocked out enough and choked on it. So no, I don't know if that's just me trying to put stuff together to make it, I don't know.
Okay. Like I said, that's all I just wanted to sit and holler at you about. One last thing, to kind of quell everything. If I asked you to take a polygraph test, would you be willing to do so?
Okay.
Matt eventually passes a polygraph arranged by his attorney. Upset that police continue to consider Carrie's death a suicide, Linda pulls together a team of her own.
Linda ended up making an appointment to talk to a former federal prosecutor.
Now in private practice, Bill Johnston had been a federal prosecutor in Waco, Texas.
The Branch Davidian complex in Waco, Texas goes up in flames.
11 of the survivors now face murder and conspiracy charges in connection with the killing of 4 federal agents.
And in 1993, he was part of the team prosecuting the 11 surviving Branch Davidians.
Those agents did not die in vain. Mrs. Doolin came to me and she said, I've heard maybe you can help me.
She explained to Bill that she doesn't believe her daughter took her own life, so she'd been working on Carrie's case with her angels.
What Charlie's angels were bringing to us was invaluable. They were this group of strong women who were not going to just let this go. They brought a series of stories about Matt's conduct at different points in his life.
Bill pulled together his own posse. He brought together retired lawmen to take over this investigation.
So I called them my guys, and they became as invested in this case as if they were fighting for their own child.
The biggest thing was to get the body exhumed, get an actual autopsy, and find out what had actually happened to Carrie Baker. how she'd actually died.
We started unraveling this thing bit by bit by bit.
Matt Coffon is a member of the legendary Texas Rangers. He joins the team and reviews the evidence on the case.
There are red flag after red flag that something was not right. It was so compelling that I could not automatically agree with the Hewitt police investigation. So I thought, okay, let's kind of break it down.
You're presented with a crime scene that's not really a crime scene, right?
These are photographs. As you can tell, there's just not much to them. There were so many things early on in this investigation that just did not match. And part of it was Matt Baker's explanation of his timeline.
He says he left and then he came back, and it was such a short time that she couldn't have died within that period.
That was the theory that we were operating on. His timetable did not really match up. This is an overall view of Hewitt, Texas, and it's not large.
And these locations are very close to each other.
Minutes apart, especially that time of night.
The team was also troubled by Carrie's suicide note, which Officer Michael Irving says was pointed out by Matt.
He just said, there's a suicide note, suicide note, suicide note. So he did direct me straight to the note.
The so-called suicide note was typed.
It's not signed, and that should be a red flag to any investigator. Let's take this a little bit further. It says, tell my mom and dad that I love them too. In this case, two is T-O, not comma, T-O-O.
She was a teacher. She could spell.
Yes.
Something didn't set right. And for me, it all pointed back to that note, that suicide note. I didn't speak up. At that time, I'd been a police officer for 6 months. If I could go and turn back time, there are a lot of things I would have done differently.
Was there an autopsy done initially?
There was no autopsy done. And so at this point, we decided that we needed to have tissue samples from Carrie's body, so we wanted to have that body exhumed.
At the time of the Hewitt police investigation, they concluded Carrie had died by suicide of over-the-counter sleep medication.
One of the tasks that Linda took on for herself was investigating Unisom. She found that it would have taken a great deal to have caused Carrie's death, and that she wouldn't have died quickly.
We came up with clues that made us believe that perhaps there were prescription medications given to her without her knowledge.
Nearly 4 months after Carrie's death, the Texas Rangers, in conjunction with Hewitt Police, are able to get Judge Martin to sign an order allowing for the exhumation of Carrie's body.
As we gathered information from various sources, determined we need to go that route.
By this time, we were working pretty closely with a detective at the Hewitt Police Department.
It was critical that they had an autopsy.
We had a lot of circumstantial evidence, but we needed some scientific evidence, something that a prosecutor can hold in their hands and say, okay, now we may have something here.
What else would the Charlie's Angels of Waco and their investigative team learn?
A photograph was found on Matt Baker's computer. He tried to delete it.
We didn't know if she might have even been involved.
Was Carrie's death a terrible tragedy or something much more sinister?
A manipulative liar wearing the mask of God came into my life.
The Hewitt preacher's wife was found dead. Her death originally ruled a suicide. But is that how the mother of two really died?
Maybe someone had held that coarse material against her nose.
I think Carrie, on some level, understood that she was in danger.
But you also discover in that Bible, Lord, I'm asking you to protect me from harm.
He's having a conversation with the 911 operator, and he's not winded, and he's perfectly calm while he's talking. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think it happened that way.
You don't quickly dress a dead body.
Here's a picture of Matt Baker. Is this the other woman?
I'm going to tell what you did. And he said, you better not do that.
Sometimes faith can be used to manipulate and to control people.
Preachers, the good ones are great. The bad ones have the most power of anybody.
Here they were, the police, in the home of a Baptist minister with a suicide note and sleeping pills and a bottle of alcohol. Well, the police at that point aren't thinking murder. They're thinking that Carrie committed suicide.
Texas pastor Matt Baker had lost a young daughter years earlier. He now appears to be facing yet another tragedy, the suicide of his wife, Carrie. But her family isn't buying it.
I knew that Carrie would never take her own life.
We will fight for the truth.
Could Carrie have been murdered? The Hewitt police, now collaborating with Texas Ranger Matt Coffon, who's been working with Carrie's family, obtained an order to exhume Carrie's body. And the autopsy results are now in.
In her muscle tissue, there was a presence of Ambien. And that was huge, huge.
And at the time of her death, she didn't have a prescription for Ambien.
No.
The autopsy now lists Carrie's manner of death as undetermined.
Now you're in undetermined land. Now you're in a mystery. Now let's solve the mystery.
Bill Johnston and his team continue to dig, now taking a closer look at those few crime scene photos.
What's this?
This is a picture of Carrie's arm. And what you're seeing here is you're seeing the beginning of lividity, the purplish color from the pooling of the blood. You know, when the heart pumps, it pumps through the veins and the arteries. When the heart stops, everything settles to its lowest point. It's gravity. We have lividity set in the body, and that takes time. And this was a problem with Bill Johnston and his team.
And so we found the person who wrote the book on crime scene reconstruction, Tom Bevel.
The first responders from the medical field are saying that lividity either was setting in or set, which in that time frame, that's a problem.
So this is their home right there, right?
Yeah, this is their home. So if he leaves his house at 11, 45 to 55 minutes later, lividity could not have been set in as it was in the photographs, all right?
Cawthon and the team believe that Carrie was likely dead before Matt Baker left his home. So if Carrie's suicide was a homicide, how was she killed? The photograph showed something more.
In one of the photographs, there is a small abrasion that is to the bridge of her nose.
We surmise that this was very likely done using a throw pillow off of a couch. It was kind of a coarse material that very likely could have caused an abrasion.
Indicating that maybe someone had held that coarse material against her nose.
That's right.
The abrasion on Carrie's nose, it's not noted in the autopsy, but the presence of the generic form of Ambien is. So Bill Johnston wants to look into Matt's digital trail. He sues Matt for wrongful death and obtains access to his computer records.
A month before Carrie's death, they discovered Matt was on the computer searching for the term overdose by sleeping pills.
I did search that. I did research to see, can you overdose? Is that even a possibility that I need to worry about? My wife overdosing on sleeping pills.
As they continued to go through the computer, they found where he tried to buy Ambien, had moved it into a cart to purchase it.
And that bit of forensics in the computers now hard linked into the toxicology forensics. Our theory became, the Ambien in the wine cooler, he got her sleepy with that so he could later suffocate her. That was our theory.
And remember those writings in Carrie's Bible about Cassidy? Well, those were written years earlier. But there was a recent troubling entry dated just 5 days before Carrie's death, which says, I feel like I have so much worry. Lord, I'm asking you to protect me from harm. I am not sure what is going on with Matt. What does that indicate?
It's ominous. It's almost like she is afraid of him.
Looking back on it, they were predictive.
I think Carrie, on some level, understood that she was in danger, and she didn't realize that at that point that he was involved with somebody else.
During this investigation, we got a clue from a woman who worked in a jewelry store and said within a couple of weeks after Carrie's death, Matt Baker comes into the jewelry store with a woman, and they're looking at engagement rings.
No, we were not. One of our rules for our kids was when they turn 6 years old, they can get earrings. And so we began looking for jewelry, earrings.
Here's a picture of Matt Baker. Is this the other woman?
This is Vanessa Bulls. She was the other woman. Now, this is a photograph that we found on his computer in trash.
We knew there was going to be a birthday party, and we took a picture of all the girls and Matt and Vanessa.
It wasn't long after Carrie's death when people came over. They didn't see any pictures of Carrie at all, but there was a picture of Vanessa with the girls. 2 of Carrie and Matt's friends came to help with the party, and one of them stayed overnight, and she saw Matt sitting on the couch with Vanessa's head on his lap.
To Carrie's family, it was clear that a romantic relationship had developed between Matt and Vanessa. 4 months after Carrie's death, police believe Vanessa Bulls just might be the key to solving this case. So they bring her to the Hewitt Police Station for questioning.
It's just scary.
I know. Sorry to keep you waiting. Like I said, I'm going to ask you some questions about that, Carrie.
Okay.
This doesn't mean the truth. Okay?
I'm sorry, this is just scary.
I know.
4 months after Carrie's death, Vanessa Bulls, the woman who appears to have become romantically involved with Matt Baker, is now sitting at the police station, answering questions about how that relationship unfolded.
Every once in a while, he started calling just to chat, just kind of asking about my divorce and, kind of saying how, like, God would work everything out.
How long was that it took it to progress to him calling a couple times a day?
I want to say a couple of weeks. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't nice to have someone who, had 2 daughters and would possibly, be the dad to my child.
Sure.
Having an affair that predated the killing, that would be big evidence.
Did you ever meet him romantically?
No.
Never? Okay.
After yes. After his wife passed away.
Okay.
Because I didn't think there was anything wrong.
2020 obtained emails, never before broadcast, that show Carrie and Matt's relationship unraveling in the weeks before Carrie's death, at the same time as Matt and Vanessa's phone calls start to heat up.
She sensed that something was very wrong.
In one of those emails, Matt blames Carrie for Cassidy's death, writing you wanted her to be pain-free, and then telling her your prayer was the one that was answered.
That made her angry, and she was going to leave him. I suggested they get counseling.
Back in that police interview, Vanessa, who at this point had broken things off with Matt, seems open to believing he could have murdered Carrie.
Do you think that he had anything to do with her death?
I think anything's possible now.
A Hewitt preacher's wife was found dead in her home. Her death, originally ruled a suicide. But now, nearly a year and a half later, a judge has set a hearing to try to determine if that is how the mother of 2 really died.
A formal inquest into Carrie's death was held, but in the end, the justice of the peace, who initially declared it a suicide, made the same determination that the autopsy had made a year earlier.
That Carrie Lynn Baker's manner and cause of death shall be recorded as undetermined.
So what do you do? And at some point, we have to do what we think is right. And in this case, it was to get an arrest warrant for Matt Baker.
Even though it wasn't ruled a homicide, nearly a year and a half after Carrie's death, Matt Baker is arrested for her murder.
Matt Baker is accused of drugging his wife Carrie with sleeping pills and then suffocating her with a pillow.
There's no way that he could take a life. I know my sons, and I just don't believe he could do that.
And we have breaking news for you now from the McLennan County Jail.
Matt Baker could be released any time now. His $200,000 bond has been paid in cash.
My best decision was to move away from there and to move back here to my hometown, where I felt support and felt loved.
And it's in Kerrville, about 200 miles from Hewitt, that our cameras catch up with Matt and his daughters.
This is a little bit of everything. They have a cafe where they take flowers and they crush them up and pretend it's chicken noodle soup.
Don't be embarrassed.
2020 gets a glimpse of life with their father.
Favorite thing to do is play with my dad.
After losing their mother.
Each have their own,
Mine.
you know, and they separate pants from shirts.
I pick mine and then he picks hers.
But I have to okay hers.
Yes.
Why?
Because she likes spaghetti straps.
But I don't wear them to school. I'm not allowed. And during this last year, he was a single parent, working and taking care of his girls. They emotionally attached to the dad very strongly, the younger one especially. This is my favorite toy because it used to be my dad's when he was a little kid.
Once Matt was released, he went on kind of a press tour.
He tried to tell the world his side of the story.
Would Matt Baker have the nerve to actually interview for and do a photo shoot with Texas Monthly? Yes, he would.
Pretty much anybody who wanted to talk with him, Matt Baker had an open door.
Tonight on 2020, was it suicide or murder?
The story goes national, and Matt Baker sits down with 2020 for an interview. He proclaims his innocence and denies he had an affair with Vanessa Bowles.
It was a friend, it was a very good friend, but there's nothing there now. I don't believe in adultery, I don't believe in divorce.
The problem was that for him was that he changed his story a little bit every time he gave one.
Matt tells 2020 that it was the police who found that suicide note.
One of the police officers found it and handed it to me, and I held it in my hands for a brief moment, and I looked at the first line, and I handed it back and said, I can't read it right now.
But listen as Matt refers to that suicide note in his 911 call.
My wife is laying in the bed, and her lips are blue, hands are cold, and there's a note that says, I'm sorry, basically.
There's no way I could ever have hurt my wife. I loved her. She's the mother of my children, and I miss her, and I did not hurt my wife.
We felt validated with the arrest, but I'm going to tell you right now, all the arrests in the world mean nothing without a good prosecution.
The Texas Rangers made an arrest on the case, and the case was then transferred to our office. And I believed that Matt had killed Carrie, but I didn't feel like that we had the proof to take it to a trial and get a conviction.
If you get an acquittal, it's over.
6 months after Matt Baker's arrest, the murder charge is dismissed after prosecutors failed to indict him.
It was frustrating, but I mean, we knew it would take time and we weren't going to stop.
People started running around town with bumper stickers that said "Justice for Carrie." Love trumps evil was underneath it.
We had truth on our side. We had God on our side.
We had Bill Johnston, and we were going to continue civilly.
But his story was not adding up anymore.
You wouldn't have left those two girls there if you didn't think
it was safe.
And would Matt's account of what he says he did when he found Carrie check out?
He's not winded, and he's perfectly calm while he's talking. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think it happened that way, John. I just don't.
When the criminal case was stalled and it wasn't going forward, Bill Johnston filed a wrongful death case, and that allowed him to subpoena Matt Baker for a deposition.
It's the lower left of the...
2.5 years after the death of his wife, Matt Baker is on the hot seat, answering questions under oath about the night she died.
About 10:45-ish, a little before 11, she asked me if I could run a couple of errands.
Now, had she sort of refreshed herself and gotten awake and got forward thinking by that time?
It was still kind of that half awake, just talking, but still kind of real drowsy.
I'm conjecturing that it went through his mind that maybe she already took all the sleeping pills before he left. Was she aware enough that you could observe that she could handle if the kids needed her, for instance?
I would, yeah, I felt that she probably could.
She had to be fine, or else she was incapacitated and he was a bad father and he just left his girls with an incapacitated person. Which one is it, Matt? So he chose the high road, that yes, Carrie was fine. So if Carrie's fine, she's not getting ready to die.
Bill was able to ask him question after question after question and get answers from him that were very helpful.
While you have the phone pressed against your shoulder, you put on her panties first, is that correct?
I believe that's right.
And then what did you do?
And I put on her shirt.
Okay, and she's on the bed at this time?
Correct.
But Matt had told police a different version of how he dressed Carrie that night.
So I put the panties on her in the bed as I was getting her out, and then when she was on the floor, I put her shirt on.
The clothing, it appears consistent, especially her panties, as to how you would typically find if they were put on by the individual, not somebody else, with a lady who is not able to assist.
If he would lie about dressing her, why? And he wanted to explain their body was cold by saying she was nude on top of the bed, as if she would have aired out, cooled off. Just a stick figure put where she came to rest once you moved. How difficult was that to move her?
I guess at the time you don't even think about it. You just do what you have to do.
We wanted to know if Matt's story holds up, so we asked Texas Ranger Matt Cawthon to put it to the test with a dummy roughly the same weight as Carrie's at the time of her death.
He would have had to reposition the body. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think it happened that way, John. I just don't.
How much time would he have had to do this between the call to 911 and the chest compressions?
About 2 minutes.
To dress her, put her body on the floor, all while on the phone with 911. We're going to see if you can do this. I'm going to put a stopwatch to it, and here we go. And you're doing it as fast as you can.
Well, I'm doing it the best I can. And I feel the phone about to fall.
We're at 48 seconds now. We're about 1:20.
He's having a conversation with the 911 operator, and he's not winded, and he's perfectly calm while he's talking to the 911 operator.
That's 1:57 seconds. And then
just to get her dressed. That doesn't include the removing from the bed and the chest compression.
And I know how to do CPR.
Oh, you do? In listening to the 911 call, it sounded phony.
Do I need to go unlock the front door?
I'll let you know when they start getting close, okay?
Okay.
I think he'd give himself an Oscar, and I'd give him a Rotten Tomato.
Just keep doing compression.
I would not have known at the time when I got there that he had been doing CPR.
You're still doing compressions?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He did not sound winded on the phone.
No, not at all. He didn't have to do chest compressions because she was already dead. He killed her, I think, before he left to go run alibi errands.
Despite Matt's inconsistencies, prosecutors feel they need more, so they bring in a new detective to help with the investigation.
My name is Abden Rodriguez, and in 2009, I was a criminal investigator for the McLennan County District Attorney's Office.
I hear they call you the human lie detector?
I guess because of some of the confessions that I was able to get.
Abdon is asked to review the case and find evidence that would help indict Matt Baker.
I wanted to look at the interviews that had been done. There was a lot of deception, you know, and I could see how, especially Vanessa, was doing it.
How many times a week would you talk, you think, prior to her death? Once every day for a couple hours, and maybe midday, or?
Sometimes a couple times a day.
As you can see, she's got her arms crossed and her legs crossed. That's a big red flag to me.
When she passed away that week, how were the conversations? Were they kind of the same way they were before?
They were really the same.
And I told him, and I said, look, the whole key to this case is going to be Vanessa Booth. She's pretty and very smooth and friendly, but at the same time, you know she's a liar.
We didn't know if she might have even been involved.
After interviewing Vanessa, Abdon decides to subpoena her to testify in front of a grand jury.
I said, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to listen to your testimony. And I said, and as soon as you lie, I'm going to file charges on you.
When they brought Vanessa Bowles in for the grand jury, that was kind of a last-ditch effort.
So we're like, okay, let's see what happens.
As she and I were walking down the hall, she whispered to me, I'm going to tell y'all everything.
Behind closed doors, Vanessa Bull's grand jury testimony is the last step in getting Matt Baker indicted.
A former preacher charged with the murder of his wife.
Finally, Vanessa's testimony is the smoking gun.
Yes, it was. It was. She had everything we needed.
The civil case was dropped at that point in order to let the criminal case continue.
Matt Baker is charged with first-degree murder, accused of drugging and suffocating his wife, Carrie, and making it look like a suicide. He pleads not guilty. Now, 4 years after his wife's death, Matt Baker is on trial for her murder.
That first day of the trial, the gallery was full.
We have a lot of people here in the gallery today.
True crime author Catherine Casey was in the courtroom every day.
I followed this story from the first time it hit the Texas newspapers. It was just so fascinating that this had unfolded, especially in Waco, in this city that's just dominated by religion.
Prosecutors began poking holes in Matt's story from that night, starting with the 911 call and his claim that he performed CPR on Carrie.
We're going to go ahead and do compressions. You're going to do it fast and hard 400 times. 400? 400 times.
Did any police officers arrive before you?
I was the first one there.
And what did he tell you?
He pulled her off the bed and put her on the floor in order to do CPR.
And what was his demeanor?
Very calm.
Did that strike you as odd?
Yes.
Even as a police officer, I would not be as calm as he was that night.
There was no way that in that period of time he was able to move her, dress her, and was doing CPR while he was having this conversation.
He wasn't sweating. He did not seem to be in any type of physical distress.
The computer expert found incredible evidence regarding searches, regarding suicide, regarding sleeping pills, and regarding Ambien, which became critical.
Can you tell the jury what was extracted from the muscle tissue of Carrie Baker?
We found 3 different drugs, phentermine, diphenhydramine, and zolpidem. And then zolpidem, and its common name is Ambien.
We never were able to determine where he got the Ambien from.
But we were able to determine that he was going to these websites and that he had gotten as far as putting Ambien in a cart.
Defense attorney Guy Gray pointed out that there was no evidence that Matt actually ordered Ambien from that website.
They went through the process of looking at it, but it was aborted and no purchase of Ambien was made.
Correct. Yes.
No further question.
You state your name for the jury, please.
Joanne Bristol.
Joanne Bristol, Carrie's grief counselor, testified about those comments she says Carrie made about Matt.
She said, "I'm thinking my husband is going to kill me," but she recanted the statement.
How do you analyze that, or what do you think about that?
I felt at that time that I knew this client very well. She had never misled me, and so when she said, "Oh, but I know he wouldn't do that," I believed her.
You didn't advise her to leave the house or move out. You didn't call law enforcement. You took that as a recanting as an accurate or true reflection of what was going on.
From her, yes.
Day 4 of the trial, and it's the prosecution's star witness, who everyone is waiting to hear.
This case was one of those cases where all of the attention is focused on one witness, and that one witness was Vanessa Bowles.
State calls Vanessa Bowles. I remember looking at Matt more than looking at the jury. I wanted to see his response, and I think he was stunned.
Raise your right hand. After years of denying their affair, Vanessa now admits that Matt began to pursue her even before Carrie died. Please have a seat.
He started asking me things about my divorce and started telling me, "Whoever finds you is going to be a lucky man."
Did he say anything else unusual to you?
He came by and was kind of smiling. He said, "Oh, don't date other guys, just date your pastor," and kind of smiled.
Did he say anything else after that?
He said, "Will you really date your pastor? I've had a vasectomy, so I can't get you pregnant. Also, I don't have any STDs." And he also started telling me that because of Carrie's depression, as he stated, their sex life had been lacking.
And at the time, were you buying into what he was telling you about Carrie?
I was buying into everything. He was a complete, and still is, a manipulative liar who took me, my vulnerable state, and made me believe everything he said.
What happened then in early March as you and Matt started to spend Fridays at the Baker home?
And he asked if he could hold my hands to pray, and he did. Then afterwards, he started to kiss me. Then he just took my hand and led me to the bedroom.
Feeling guilty about being with her pastor, Vanessa says that Matt tried to reassure her.
I was extremely remorseful. I couldn't believe what just happened. He started saying, "It's okay, don't feel bad, just ask God to forgive you." And he said, in reality, he said, "I don't think God believes that anyone can just be with one person the rest of their lives."
After Carrie's death, Vanessa says Matt wanted more, perhaps even making her the next Mrs. Baker.
At some point, did you and Matt take the girls and go to K Jewelers in the mall?
We did. He stated that the girls wanted to go look at wedding rings for me.
Are you telling the jury that he was prepared at this point, a week or two after Carrie's death, to trade in Carrie's wedding set to get you a ring that you wanted?
Correct.
Matt had denied this in interviews, but a salesperson from the jewelry store corroborated Vanessa's account.
She tried on about 4 or 5 rings, asked his opinion. He just would tell her it didn't matter what he liked, it was what she liked, because she would be the one wearing it.
Vanessa then drops a bomb when she says not only did Matt want out of his marriage,
He said that if we ever fell so much in love that he would find a way out of it.
she also knows what happened to Carrie Baker.
I told him, "I'm going to tell what you did." And he said, "You better not do that."
Vanessa testifies that Matt was openly plotting Carrie's death.
At what point did he start talking about planning her murder?
It was sometime mid-March. He said that You know, she took sleeping pills every night, so maybe he could make it look like she overdosed on sleeping pills.
Vanessa Bowles talked about how Matt had ruminated about all the different ways he might kill Carrie.
He talked about making it look like she had hung herself. He talked about tampering with the brakes of her car, maybe doing a drive-by shooting.
What I saw from Vanessa's testimony was a man who was much more evil than even I believed he was.
She testified that Matt planned to kill Carrie with a tainted milkshake and then craft a suicide note.
1 to 2 weeks before Carrie's death, did he tell you that he had in fact tried that?
He did. He sent an email and said she took a sip of it and said that it tasted like lead. And so then he said he took a drink and said, oh, well, the ice cream must have been bad. He mentioned that he would leave a note, and he said that he would type it. And I said, that's never going to work. You're going to be caught. And he said, oh, no, she types everything.
Did he say something else about what he believed other people thought about her mental state?
Oh, he said that no one would question it because of how depressed she was.
Vanessa stuns the courtroom when she says Matt Baker told her how he killed his wife.
He had gotten big horse pills. He said he emptied out all the contents and put crushed Ambien in them. He said he handcuffed her to the bed, started kissing her and touching her all over until she fell asleep. Then he said he got the pillow and put it over her face.
What did he say happened next?
He said that he thought she was dead, and he just said she just took one big ass for air, and he said, oh, and then put the pillow back on her face, except he did this with his hand to be sure that he suffocated her.
He didn't even feel enough remorse when he realized that she was still alive to rethink it. He just wanted to finish the job.
He said he typed out the suicide note, printed it, got her hand, and he said that he ran her hand all around the sides of it and put her fingerprints all over it. He said that he set everything up, locked the door, and left.
What was the reaction in the courtroom to Vanessa's testimony that not only did Matt Baker kill his wife, but that he had been planning it?
He had planning it, and the things that he did, people couldn't believe it. I think the more surprising thing was that they couldn't believe that she's up there telling all this.
So you knew that Friday, April 7th of 2006 was the day that he was going to try it again?
I knew he was going to try it then, yes.
All right. And you didn't report that to anybody?
No.
Vanessa says she had second thoughts about Matt and the cover-up of Carrie's murder.
Not only had I known about this and not done the right thing, in truth, who would believe me? He was a preacher. And so I felt like I was stuck.
She then chose to break it off with him.
I decided that I didn't care what he told me anymore, that we didn't worship the same God. So I called him. I told him, I never want to see you again. And he became irate. He started saying, I killed my wife for you, and now you're leaving.
In a move Vanessa believed was meant to intimidate her, she testifies that Matt sent her an MP3 of a song called Dirty Little Secret.
He was talking about the murder plan, and he later referenced it, stating, I need to keep my mouth shut, don't tell anyone, or you'll be just another regret.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Bowles. The defense pressed Vanessa on why she was now coming clean about everything.
How would we know to believe you, Vanessa?
Because what do I have to gain from this right now? I'm setting things right. I made a mistake here because a manipulative liar wearing the mask of God came into my life. And this testimony is going to put him where he needs to be.
It's now up to the jury to determine where Matt needs to be.
Folks, we can't protect her from harm. The only thing now we can do is give her justice. Then turned and pointed to Matt and said to convict this murdering minister and find him guilty for one reason only, because he is guilty.
The indictment says there's got to be facts of drugs and a pillow. And the only way you can get those facts is by believing Vanessa Bulls. And she is just not credible.
I think a lot of people struggled with Vanessa.
I mean, she had done horrible things, but I think it really helped her credibility when she was on the stand because she didn't try to fade her own culpability.
I think Vanessa was absolutely the key to the case.
We've reached a unanimous verdict, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Matt D. Baker, guilty of the offense of murder as alleged in the indictment.
For the sentencing phase of the trial, the jury gets to hear additional testimony.
They came back and had witnesses from his past come and talk to us about things that he had done.
One by one, women testify about sexual misconduct they say they endured from Matt Baker.
He came up from behind me, put his hand on my breast. I pushed him away, told him no. He tried to kiss me, told him no.
I remember having to use all my strength to try to keep him off of me and from taking my clothes off.
Including Laura Wilson, the student trainer who worked alongside him in college.
He took his hand and began running up my thigh and between my legs.
I think as a jury, to see, what all he's been doing since he was a teenager made us 100% feel like that we had definitely made the right decision.
The jury sentenced Matt Baker to 65 years in prison. And finally, Carrie's mother has a chance to confront him directly.
I'm talking to you, Matt, today, okay? You haven't looked at me in almost 4 years. Can you look at me today?
So what does Matt have to say from behind bars?
Yeah, we asked him to. Gave him a call.
The sentence of the court that you be confined for a term of 65 years. There's some victim impact statements given by the family of the victim. You may proceed.
I'm talking to you, Matt, today, okay? You haven't looked at me in almost 4 years. Can you look at me today? For a little while, okay?
But she did talk to him directly, and he looked down.
Matt, she loved you. And then you took her from us, Matt. You discarded her like she was yesterday's trash. You murdered the mother of your children. But love trumps evil. I don't know why, but I felt pity for him.
I truly believe in my innocence. I believe the jury made a mistake in this.
After his sentencing, 2020 speaks with Matt Baker again, this time in prison, where he finally admits to his affair with Vanessa, but continues to maintain his innocence.
I'm coming clean on the lying about Vanessa. I made a mistake. I'm human. I made a mistake there. I should not have ever got involved in that. I was having a tough spot in my marriage, and I took the chicken way out. But I would never have hurt my wife. I never did. I never laid a hand on her, ever.
Their mother was erased from them. They need to know she loved them. And she didn't leave them by choice.
A year and a half after Matt's conviction, Linda was given custody of her granddaughters.
It was a long journey for the girls to understand what had actually happened to their mother.
Carrie Baker didn't kill herself. She was murdered.
He was a Baptist pastor, preacher.
He was a predator.
I think he's a dark angel.
That you may fear the Lord your God.
You get to be the hero during daylight and sneak around in the dark and be evil.
What do you make of the fact that now, nearly 20 years after the case, Matt Baker still maintains his innocence? He's one of those people that can just lie and believe in himself that he's innocent.
The real hero in this is Linda Doolin. She fought for her child.
My mother. My mother's will.
It's strong.
Determination.
There's nothing like it, really.
It touches you.
It does.
Why?
Because I have children. And these are hard things. Linda Doolin is a brave, strong woman. I'll always admire that about her.
We love each other, and we knew Carrie did not take her life, and we weren't going to sit back until somebody would listen to us.
She was an amazing mother, and she would fight for any of us. And I just wanted everybody to know the truth.
Carrie's family is still so heartbroken over their loss, but committed to remembering the joy she brought them all. We should point out tonight that Matt Baker hasn't seen his daughter since he went to prison, but he hopes they'll visit one day.
As for Baker, David, he has exhausted all of his state appeals. For an inside look at tonight's 2020, join me for our brand new podcast, 2020, The After Show. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Deborah Roberts.
And I'm David Muir from all of us here at 2020 and ABC News.